Hey, all you cool cats. Ready for a little fun? That's what I thought. Pop Talk, Scooby-Doo-Wah-Doo-Wah, Pop Talk. The fun never stops, you know. Pop Talk. If you're a nerd or a jock, run, don't just walk. Get ready to rock, you got Pop Talk.
Now, from Funko Hollywood, it's time for Pop Talk.
Hey everybody, it's your pal Funmaker Mike. We're here for another edition of Pop Talk with our pal Freddie Prinze Jr.
Hi, and hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, man. It's my pleasure.
Do you have any idea what this is about?
We're about to find out whether I do or not, but I have gone through the store, and at 46 years old, I have a deep appreciation for set design. And as soon as I walked in, I was like, wow, that's a giant pirate ship. That's awesome. And there's toys inside it. So yeah, man, this is a great place.
Today, as we do the interview, we're gonna ask you to build your own pop. It can be you, alter ego you, it can be whatever you want.
It'll be anime me for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure it will be.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a bunch of hard-hitting questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I have blue hair. I'm going blue hair because I'm anime, but I'm ready for these questions as well.
Funko is a collectibles company. Do you, Freddie Prinze Jr., collect anything?
I do, and not a lot of people know this, but since I was a little kid, my grandmother, who's passed on now, her name was Mary, she was a huge lucha libre fan, which is professional wrestling, the luchadors with the masks, and she took me to a match in Puerto Rico, and there was a steel cage around the ring, and I was like, oh, is this a steel cage match? And she said, no, that's to keep the audience from killing the guy if the wrong one wins. And I was 8 or 9 years old, like, oh my God, is this, and I thought it was real. And because my dad was Freddie Prinze, who was a famous comedian and actor in the 70s, these Puerto Rican luchadors loved him, and one of them gave me his mask. And if you accidentally hurt someone in the ring, a lot of luchadors retire that mask because you're supposed to come out as in good a shape as when you went in, right? And so I got that first mask and I put it on, and it smelled like sweat, baby oil, and dirt. And I still love all three of those smells to this day. And I started collecting masks after that. And I have well over 5,000 masks. I have about 400 in the house, and all the rest are in storage because my wife's like, we're not displaying all of these.
Do you have them on like mannequin heads and?
Yeah, and I even started collecting like superhero custom ones as well, and went well beyond just the luchador world. I even have a They Live mask, that great John Carpenter film with Roddy Piper from the 80s. It was a cult movie. If you haven't seen it, please go see it. It's amazing. And it's the mask that you would see if you had the sunglasses on, where you could kind of see the truth, and you could see who was an alien and who was a human left on this planet.
That's the whole Shepard Fairey thing.
Yes, and it was, so I even have one of those masks, and I love them since I was a little kid. I think I always wanted to be a man behind a mask. Like, my favorite movies when I was a kid were horror films, the monster movies.
Yeah.
And when I first got in this business, I always wanted Ron Perlman's career. He was Hellboy. He was in The Island of Dr. Moreau. He was the Beast from the television series Beauty and the Beast back in the 80s. But no studio was going to let me do that. They were like, we want to see your pretty face. And I just wanted to be a monster.
We've heard that you're a big fan of comic books.
Yeah.
So that's probably something else you collect.
Not so much anymore, because the collectible market in comics was destroyed.
Yeah.
I won't say who destroyed it, but his name rhymes with Nicolas Cage. He would pay anything for a book, and it just got too insane. And his salary was bigger than mine in the 90s. So I was just like, man, I can't compete unless it's a book he hates. And then all of a sudden he would love the books that I hate too, and he would just get everything. But I do have a pretty solid collection. I have 1 through 100 of the X-Men. I have every Morbius cover ever done, and then I have some other sneaky ones that we don't talk about. But I still have a few, but I haven't actively collected comics since about 98, 99, when the market really exploded.
So obviously, Funko World, Scooby-Doo.
I've signed a lot of Fred Jones Funkos, my man.
Yeah. When you played Fred Jones, like, was it challenging for you, to meet those hyper, ultra fan expectations of what he's gonna be like? And
I don't think so. I've only gotten nervous twice in approaching roles. My first one, and then the last movie I just did, because it was my first time playing a father on camera. Right. And I really wanted to show off the 13 years of experience that I have. But there were moments that I was nervous because I wanted them to be just right. But I watched every episode of Scooby-Doo. Like Hanna-Barbera, I remember when they still had their animation shop in the Valley over by Universal Studios. Now it's like, unfortunately, it's like a gym or something that you pay $30 a month to go work out, and it should have been a historical landmark. And in America, you know, we tear our, like Eddie Izzard said back in the day, you tear your history down, man.
You tear your history down, man.
And we do, and that should have been a historically preserved building, but unfortunately it wasn't, and I would go there just for fun when I moved back to California in 1994. So I've seen everything they've ever done, but I used to know Scooby-Doo episodes by heart. Like I could legit just lip sync as the show was going, the same way I could my father's comedy albums back in the day. So I didn't feel nervous going into that, and they didn't put any pressure on me to replicate the Welker voice, and really encouraged me to keep things in my own thing. So I think Lillard probably had a much higher standard to live up to playing Shaggy, and did such a great job that he still does it to this day in the animated, in the new ones. I think it's called Be Cool Scooby-Doo.
When you look back at Sanford and Son and Chico and the Man, those were kind of groundbreaking. Like,
you could never make those shows today.
Yeah.
Never. And oddly enough, I've never really said this, my dad resented that Chico moniker because it means boy. And Richard Pryor, rest in peace, the greatest comic ever, discovered my dad. He's the reason my dad became famous. But he said, you know, why are you on a show where they call you boy? Like, you're so much better than that. You should be pushing things forward, not bringing things back. And that really irked my father. And he struggled with that. And had the show gone on, I don't know if he would have remained with it, because it was something that was very difficult. But the types of jokes they told, I've always felt that humor should be given more latitude than a serious conversation, right? I feel like stand-up comics should be given more rope because they're not approaching any topic with malice. Their job is to make you laugh. I've heard a very smart comic named Jeff Dye, although he plays very dumb, has said, I'm sorry the way I tried to make you happy didn't work. So the content that they were selling, I was all for, because it was a racist old man and this guy who's just this young Mexican kid, even though my dad wasn't Mexican, who wasn't having it. And he broke through all that racism with love. And it was a very powerful moment for Latinos in this business. And I've heard people say, like, yo, Desi may have unlocked the door, but Freddie Prinze, my father, I'm Junior, was the one that kicked it off the hinges. And a lot of comics have told me he's the reason I got into stand-up comedy. It was because of your father, white or Latino.
this last role that you just took, do you see yourself now, like, was it invigorating again? Like, do you think, hey, you know, I want to get doing this again. I want to start writing and performing and acting in my own roles. I mean, or what are you thinking?
I'll be honest with you. When I first was going to go back, it was every check was going into my wrestling federation treasure chest, right? Because that's my dream, is to have my own federation. I've written a script. A couple people have it right now. And I was like, if everyone says no, then all the money I earn for the next 2 years is going to go into this, and I'll just self-produce it and make it myself. Not even by the time it was over. I mean, I worked with this girl named Amy Garcia, and she just wasn't having it. And her energy, legit, she goes, we're gonna have the #1 Christmas movie on Netflix. She said that on day one of rehearsals. And I'm like, all right, that's a cute. I'm a little cynical, a lot cynical, and I've been in this business a long time, and my father before me. I'm like, well, that's nice. We can't control that. I'm much more of like, we can control our actions and our reactions to other people's actions. That's how I was raised. That's a concrete mold that's built around me. And she just took a jackhammer to it. And by the end of week 1, we had been filming 5 days. I'm like, we're gonna have the #1 Christmas movie on Netflix. And I just completely got on this wave that she created. I'm just still riding that way. Like it's like a San Diego slow roller, man. It's just like a little 3-footer that breaks way out far and takes you all the way into the beach, and I'm still not at the beach.
Was it because of the script that made you want to do it?
It was a lot of different things. I mean, I've been offered a lot of romantic comedies since I walked away from the business when my daughter was born, because growing up without a dad, being a full-time father was priority one.
Right.
When my daughter was born, I kind of already had one foot out the door, but it was very easy to walk away. And I don't believe in making announcements like that. Like, when you're done playing with a toy, you throw it away. You don't tell all your friends, I'm throwing away this toy, or I'm done playing this video game. You're just done. You move on to a new game. And it hit me so hard. Like when I read it, I was like, wow, I can actually like show something new in a romantic comedy that I haven't done. Because other than that, it's two pretty people struggling to fall in love for 96 minutes, and you know it's going to work out in the end. They're not Romeo and Juliets, you know what I mean? So that was it. And then finally, and a lot of people don't believe this when I say it, I've never been offered a Latino role in my career. Now, a lot of times the studios will change the name after they hire me to show like, look, we're diverse, but they're not diverse. That does not count. The character's last name was Johnson. And then once they hire Freddie, they go, oh, look, it's Ortiz. Look, we include everyone. No, you don't. So the only time I ever got to play a Latino was when I wrote my own show. It was geniusly named Freddie. It was very creative. But they came to me with this, and this was a Latina director with Gabriela, Latina producer with Herman Miguel. Like everyone involved in this, on camera and off, was darn near Latino. And so to get the opportunity to earn their respect was a huge factor in me taking the movie. And I'm not one of these new school guys who you demand your respect. No, you demand dignity. Social media has blurred those two words into one, but they're very different. Everyone deserves dignity, but respect is earned. It should never be given. It should be earned. When you just give strangers respect, that's how you get burned. That's how you get betrayed. So all I've ever wanted was an opportunity to earn it, and they gave me that opportunity, and I'm forever grateful with them. Like I would hold a boom mic for Gabriela in her next movie if she didn't want me to act in it. By the time we were halfway through the movie, I was like, I'm back. And I called my manager. I was like, hey, will you come out to New York? I want to talk to you. I was like, I'm back. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready to read scripts. I'm ready to write. This was before I even wrote my wrestling script. And I was just like, just so you know, I'm 100% motivated. And this woman in this movie have made me fall in love with it all over again. So I'm all the way back in.
Wow.
Getting ready to make a horror movie this summer that I'm super excited to do. I can't really talk about it yet, but it's, you know, if I could only make horror movies the rest of my life, I would. But I definitely will make some more romantic comedies along the way. As long as there's something that's a little different, right? Like in this one, I got to be a dad. In the next one, there's just got to be some kind of hook where I go, oh yeah, I haven't done that. That sounds cool. Because I know I can do romantic comedies really well. I've never gotten to be a monster or the main protagonist in a horror movie or the bad guy that's not a monster. Like, I know you did, he was the guy helping the girl, but he wasn't the main guy, right? So I've always dreamt of that, and it'll happen. It'll happen this summer.
Let's move on to this one. It says, tell us about your voiceover work. Do you enjoy it? Is it appealing?
I do. It was a whole new ball game, right? Like you're so limited physically in what you can do because it messes up the sound quality. So you really have to train your voice in a new way to bring suspense, to bring, you know, exhaustion, to bring violence, to bring love. To bring sexiness, like all these things, you're just limited and like handcuffed, like Harry Houdini in the straitjacket, right? And you still have to perform the trick. So, but it's not the escape trick. Now they want to see you pull a rabbit out of a hat while your hands are tied. So it was a training process on Star Wars Rebels for sure, because we recorded that the way you would an old school radio show, like The Shadow back in the day. We were all in studio at the exact same time. And we would do the whole episode in order, page 1 to page 22 or 23, however long our scripts were. And that was it. And so it felt the way the actors in The Breakfast Club felt. You know, they shot that whole movie in order outside the drive-up scene and the awesome scene at the very, very end. So, by the way, that's how much of a film actor I put my hand up, blocked you, and I was like, oh, move it over here. He needs to have his life. My wife would be very proud of me. But yeah, so it was like doing these radio shows. And the Kanan role was so much different, the experience, to any other thing I did, right? Because Dave Filoni was George Lucas's protege. He knows everything about Star Wars. Like, he would break everything down for 30 to 45 minutes of every moment in the episode before we'd even record. So it's not like you're doing the scene and then getting notes, although that would happen sometimes. You're getting the whole story before you even record, and he goes, and now we're just gonna rock and roll and go. And so it felt like you were doing live radio. And I'm working with this kid I'd never met, Taylor Gray, who I'm still friends with. I'm friends with that whole cast still to this day. I mean, that's how tight we got as a group. But I'm working with this kid, and I'm not allowed to look at him when we have moments, right? Because I have to be focused on the microphone. Otherwise, it's off mic. So Taylor and I, coming from film, we legit just asked, hey, can you turn us a little bit so that we can see each other? It would be a little easier. And that's how they kind of allowed us to slowly, you know, learn that craft, so to speak, in season 1. By season 4 or 5, however many we did, I think it was 4, then we were good to go, and we would just, you know, face forward and look at Dave and see how he was feeling about the performances we did. But as far as like the voice, that was easy. That's just a more serious Freddie Prinze Jr. voice. Like when I got to do Dragon Age, which was a ton of fun. I mean, I did a couple for them. I did James Vega in Mass Effect, which is just like a New Mexican Freddie Prinze Jr. And I grew up in New Mexico in here, so that was easy. But the Iron Bull is the one. Like that's the voice, that's my favorite character I've ever played, ever. And it's from a video game. Like it's not from a big movie that made $100 million. It's not from Scooby or She's All That. It's a giant, bull-looking, massive, buff guy. And they wanted this like linebacker bro voice, like, hey, what's up? And it just didn't feel right. And so we started experimenting with other voices. And I've loved doing voices since I was a kid. You know, one of my dad's best friends was Charles Fleischer. You were mentioning
of course, yeah.
Roger Rabbit. My mom let me live with him for a summer vacation when I was 12 years old, which isn't the most responsible thing to do, but Charles floats that line of genius and insanity, right? So when I was 12, I was like, will you teach me how to do Roger Rabbit? And he's like, I hate that friggin' rabbit. And I was like, please, please, my friends will think I'm so cool. And so he would start talking to me about voice control long before he would teach me the voice. And so when he does his stand-up, he will sound like he's speaking jive in the 70s to an English Shakespearean actor, to a Rasta guy, to Orale, Mexican. Like he'll do all these crazy voices. And then eventually he would teach me Roger.
Thanks. I needed that.
And as I start to develop that tool, that's what got me excited for Iron Bull, because I was like, let's just float through a bunch of voices and we're gonna land on something you like. And if we don't, I'll do the bro voice, even though I don't want to, but I'll commit to it. And so we started experimenting with all these voices, from like Thunder and Pete from the Mickey Mouse Club to like a very like Winston, like we shall not flag or fail. And I eventually like smushed those together and it became the Iron Bull.
It had to be demons.
And the director, Caroline, was like, we just found the voice. Yeah. We just found the voice. And I was like, I think we just found the voice. And so from that moment on, it was like once a week for 6 weeks was the most fun I ever had in my entire career, was getting to play that guy. He's just the coolest guy ever. He's the most non-judgmental, but he was the toughest guy. He was the most loyal guy. They did some weird extra bonus stuff later where if you betrayed him at some point, you were dead to him. Like he was just so black and white while living in the gray area that I was just like, this is the coolest guy. And people would say, do you like Kanan or Iron Bull more? I'm like, Iron Bull. It's so easy. And I love Kanan. I love Kanan. My daughter's introduction to Star Wars was Kanan Jarrus, so there's a special connection there. But compared to Iron Bull, forget about it, man. He's the best ever.
You know, I've done a little voice stuff myself just on our little shows we call FunTV, but
You can do this.
I ain't like you. I can't get up there on that stage. Mr. Martindale, you're one of a kind.
what I found is when we cut our break for the day or even for lunch or something, sometimes I have to go back and listen because I'll lose the voice. Like, do you ever have a problem?
Yes, so the trick with that, and Mark Hamill actually told me this, and I met him forever ago, and of course the first thing I was teach me how to do the Joker voice. Yeah. This is what I ask everybody. I go, can you teach me how you did that, right? So what he told me was you find a few lines that you can own, and every time you lose the voice, you go back to those lines.
Yep.
So when he taught me Joker, when my son would ask me to do the Joker voice, I would always start with, you killed Captain Clown.
You killed Captain Clown!
You killed Captain Clown! And then I could do the other voices for him and get into like the Jingle Bells, when he does the whole thing from Batman the Animated Series, which is still the greatest Batman stories that have ever been told. Paul Dini, love you. But yeah, so that is definitely a thing. But with Kanan, it wasn't an issue. With Iron Bull, I would go back to some like original lines from the first scene and start to work on those, or I would go to the famous Winston Churchill speech, the whole "we shall not flag or fail," and that's how I would rediscover Iron Bull if it started to get too Sean Connery, which was it was a trap, you know, because all of a sudden it could get, you know what I mean, and it doesn't sound cool anymore because only Sean Connery sounds cool doing that voice. If I do it, they're like, who's that dumb surfer guy trying to sound like Sean Connery? So yes, I have lost the voice before, but that was the trick that Hamill told me to kind of bring it all back, was just find those like couple lines that you own and then just build off that again.
You wrote your own cookbook, Back to the Kitchen. Name a dish that people would be surprised that you can prepare.
So I can do anything but sushi. If you follow me on Instagram, I just made coq vin, which is like fancy French chicken, for my wife on just a random Monday night, just because it sounded like a good thing to make. I marinated it in bay leaves and red wine for like 36 hours before I put it in the crock pot. But my mom was a chef, so she didn't teach me how to throw a football. She taught me how to cook. And all the stories she would tell me about my dad or my grandfather, every story was in front of a stovetop. Like my mom making miso soup from scratch in the 80s before it was just instant like squirt and water, you know what I mean? Like they do nowadays. Or whether it was, like green chili chicken enchiladas that we would have in New Mexico, because the hatch chili that grows there is just phenomenal to die for. She taught me how to make sopapillas, which is almost like an Indian fry bread that in New Mexico, it's a puffed pastry that we rip open and we put honey in to combat the heat, right? From a lot of the chili, red or green, that you get there. And it's a very Christmas thing as well. So that's the one traditional thing I make every Christmas is sopapillas, right? And nobody in LA even knows what those are, because it's a New Mexican thing more than a Mexican thing. It was almost like a combination between the Native Americans there and the Mexicans that were there, kind of like taking Indian fry bread and putting their spin on it and going, look what we can make. So yeah, man, as far as like surprising people, I can make you anything you want. Like my fried chicken is ridiculous. It was ridiculous before I went to New Orleans. I did a movie in New Orleans, met this little lady, pre-Katrina. Her home got destroyed in Katrina, but she would sell it out the back of her house. It was called the Chicken Shack. Old school people in New Orleans watching this right now with their Funko are like, I remember that place. You had to buy 3 pieces minimum. And the first day I went there, I was trying to grab food for me and another actor on the movie. And she was like, now baby, you gotta have at least 3 pieces. I was like, oh, I was trying to get 3 chickens. Like, I'm ready to go. She's like, oh, I'm gonna love you. I put on 11 pounds during that production. If you watch the movie, I think it was called Pool Hall Profits, you'll see me gain weight throughout the process. It's like watching Shane when he cut his hair and he walks in and all of a sudden the hair is short. Like, that's how I looked in that. But I can cook anything. If it's not sushi, because I just don't have the artistic talent that a lot of those chefs have, where they serve it to you and it looks like a piece of art, like a painting, and you're almost like you don't want to eat it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't have that, but everything else I can cook for you, man.
All right, here's a good one for you. In this new digital world with social media and all that comes with that, and having kids and all, obviously, like the positives, the negatives, how do you view?
Social media is a tricky thing, and there's multiple generations that have been born into it now. And they're so conditioned to not decide how they feel about something until others have decided.
Amen.
Wow. And no artist worth their weight is concerned with how the audience feels. I mean, you can go back to Prince and David Bowie. I mean, they've said things, I'll poorly quote them, but Prince said, once you start looking through your art through the lenses of others, it's no longer your art. And that's what social media is. I've seen people send me stuff like, here's a picture of Kanan I drew, but I didn't get any likes, so I'm sure it sucks. And I wanted to write back, a 12-page essay, but you're only allowed so many characters where I'm like, if you're not doing this for you, stop. Like, no artist worth their weight is making art for other people. If you click with something I do, that's great. If you don't, that's great. Like, it doesn't, again, I'm in control of my actions and my reactions to yours, and that's it. So the success of art is the completion of the piece. That's the success. So that like button, I think, is a very dangerous thing. I've seen people write something, and if 3 people press the like button, they're convinced they're right. The possibility that all 4 of them are wrong never enters the equation, from political ideas to scientific ones to creative and artistic ones. Whereas if no one presses the like button, they'll give up on their idea right away because they'll think it's garbage. And it's like, you can't look at life like that. I mean, you obviously can, but you'll never find the satisfaction you're seeking and you're looking for if you're seeking it in that digital space. And as far as the other half of it, the TikTok stuff, that's a trickier thing, because now we're celebrating unoriginal ideas. Now we're celebrating mediocre, and we're rewarding mediocre. When Milli Vanilli got busted, they got ran out of town. Now they're rewarded with movies and TV deals, and all they're doing is lip syncing someone else's art. someone else's work. And because it's so easy to press that button than it is to like get up, go out, buy a record, or go see a movie, or go to a concert and see that art. Now there are generations that are inspired to be that, to be average, to be mediocre, and see that they can be successful instead of being original and taking a risk and taking a chance. I've seen people send me fan films and I won't even watch them, but I'll respond and say, you send me a film that you make that's your idea, and if it's good, I'll repost it and send it to the world. My following isn't that huge. I think I have like I don't know, like 1 million people on Instagram that follow me, but I'll make sure that every single one of them see it. But I don't want to see your version of Ahsoka Tano and Darth Maul, because I already saw Dave Filoni do it, and I promise his is better, because it was his idea. Those were his characters, not Darth Maul, but Ahsoka was his concept. So just change the names. Just have a character named Renoka Fano, and instead of a lightsaber, she's got a sword, and I'll give that a shot. But I don't want to see your fan film, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I just want to challenge you to be original. I want to challenge your ideas as an artist. The same way my acting coach would challenge us in scenes in class. You'd have just one line, and he would say, stop. His name's Andrew McGarrian. I owe him everything. He'd say, stop. What are you trying to say? I'd be like, dude, it's the first line in the scene. It's hello. He goes, okay, but how do you feel about this person coming in the room? I don't know, I like them. You said I don't know, so that's why I stopped you. You have to know when you see them, allow that to affect you. I love this girl so much. And that's gonna change the way you say hello to her. Otherwise, you're just saying hello, and I don't wanna watch. And that sounds mean, but God bless that man for being what in today's terms are mean, because I wouldn't have worked without that kind of challenge. Otherwise, it's just generic. And again, this isn't me trying to bash on anyone. I'm challenging you as a creative mind to do something original, to come up with something new. Twitch streamers, that's a whole other thing. They're selling their souls for a subscription for $5 a month, but when you do that, you are now their property instead of your own. And I believe them to be content creators, but play the games you want to play. Don't ask, hey, what do you want me to play? Or if I get 100 followers, I'll put on a banana suit. Like, you're sacrificing dignity, you're sacrificing your soul for people to love you instead of loving yourself and saying, this is something I love. And the only game I play is Duck Hunt from the original Nintendo Entertainment System, and I'm gonna play it for 6 hours straight. And if you wanna watch, cool. And if you don't, cool. But this is something I love, you know? And so a lot of Twitch streamers call me Uncle Freddie or Grandpa Freddie. And I would tell them like, yo, don't do that. Like, you're giving these people too much control. You're giving them too much say over your art and what you want to do. And one day you're gonna want to take it back, and when you do, they're gonna feel betrayed and they're gonna take it all away, and then you're back to where you started. Whereas if you just build it up organically, it may take longer, but that's okay. It's yours if it takes longer. It's yours if you're doing what you love. So it's, you know, this may be the most like controversial question you asked me in this whole interview. And I'm sure it's gonna hurt some people's feelings, but again, like a comic, there's no malice behind what I'm saying. I'm saying this with love. You're allowed to disagree, that's cool, but just know from experience, and I've seen what being famous can do to people when they lose themselves. It killed my father. It's destroyed River Phoenix. It's destroyed so many countless artists who lost themselves in fame when it came, and they just weren't ready and didn't know how to deal with it, whether it was drugs or whatever they're going through emotionally or mentally, or any of those things. Shakespeare said it best: know thyself, or thine self, whatever. I'm not a Shakespearean, royal actor or anything like that. But you have to know yourself, who you are, and what you bring to the table long before you get famous, or you're dead. And I don't mean that figuratively. It's literally happened to people. So that's like the best way I could answer that question is, I knew who I was long before I Know You Did Last Summer popped. I like anime, I like playing video games, I like pro wrestling and martial arts. I'm 46 years old now, 47, however old I am now. I still like the exact same things. I watched Looney Tunes last night because Chuck Jones rules.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it wasn't even with my son. I was in bed alone while my wife was at the People's Choice Awards, and I couldn't have been happier. I know who I am. I know what I like. And you can say, well, you're not evolving. Okay, but I'm still well balanced. I still have a lot of interests, and I'm fully committed to them. And all casuals are invited. I don't use, if you're, like, that's a whole nother issue, like, oh, casual Star Wars fan. Nah, man, you want casuals. Casuals means more success for the thing you like, which means the artists that you love, the writers and directors, are gonna get more money to make the next movie even better than the one before. It's same with anime, like, oh, casual anime fan. No, you want them. The only time I think casuals hurt art was punk rock music because it made it mainstream and execs couldn't relate and they took the punk out of it and just made it like rock instead of like the hardcore part. So yeah, man, I really encourage artists to believe in themselves, to bet everything on themselves. If you want to have a plan B, that's cool, but the commitment to the dream has to be there. And it can't just be a dream. You have to actively be pursuing, because everyone has a dream.
Yeah.
You have to actively pursue it. Find people smarter than you. Find people more successful than you. And in today's day and age with social media and the internet, you actually can talk to them. Twitter fame and Twitch fame is the most dangerous type of fame that the entertainment industry has ever had. And you know, there's a lot, people talk about mental illness now more than ever. Well, yeah, these are 16, 17-year-old kids that have 1 million followers on their Twitch stream, you know what I mean? Yelling and screaming at them. And I'm not one of these old people that hates y'all because I had to have a boss who crapped on me every day and you can make $1 million on YouTube. It's way harder when you have 1 million bosses on YouTube telling you how horrible you are than the one boss the guy in the 70s and 80s had to deal with. So I'm on their side. I just want them to know, like, you have to do it your way. You have to do it and if you don't know what that way is yet, then stop. Take a little time away, figure it out, and then go after it again. Like, it's okay to take a break. You can build that audience up again, but take your time and just do it for you. Do it for you. That's the best, that's the short version of my 30-minute long-winded answer, sorry.
No, I think it's super important and very inspiring, and I want to keep every second of what you just said. I think a lot of people can learn from that and really relate to that. I know I've taken it all in. I love it.
I hope so. And even if it's just one person and everyone else is like, nice soapbox, Freddie, that's fine. It is my soapbox. You know what I mean? I proudly stand on that soapbox. Young people are like, what's a soapbox? But if it even clicks with one person and they see it and they go, yeah, I'm going to stop asking what game you want me to play and I'm just going to show you what game I want to play. And if that means you're not gonna follow me, okay, cool. You'll find someone.
I know even with myself, my own life, sometimes when I've made those decisions that were unpopular or that didn't come out like financially maybe to where there was a level that other people would say that was a success, those are some of the most satisfying. You know?
Yes.
Some of the most satisfying of my whole life.
Because it's learning, it's learning and it's betting on yourself and going, okay, I didn't get it this time, but next time watch what I do. Because now I'm better for it. All those mistakes that were made, all these other like hardships that I went through, the people that I know I won't work with again, the new person that I discovered that I want to work with for the rest of my career, like it all is a part of that process. You're not going to be perfect first time out the box, man. It's just never going to happen. And no artist ever. You pick a painter, a sculptor, an actor, a musician, a toy maker, anything like this. You know, Stan Winston's first sculptures, I promise you guys, they weren't good. Like Steph Curry missed his first three-pointer. Like, I promise he missed it. Like Tiger Woods' first, ball strike went right. You know what I mean? Like it takes time and allow that to happen. I know we don't have to wait, right? Because we live in a world where everything's right away, right now, super fast. But it's okay. It's okay. Like old school pizza philosophy, we'll get it there in a half hour or it's free. You can wait 30 minutes, man. You can wait 30 minutes. It's okay. It doesn't have to be right now, especially when it comes to art. You should make things that people don't respond to. You should make things that people don't like. It helps shape and mold the type of art you wish to create. And it goes back to like Prince and David Bowie, man. The moment you start looking at it through the lenses of others, it's not yours anymore. And that shouldn't be the case, man. And granted, Prince went off and like it turned into a whole like anti-establishment, screw the record companies, but he was right about that too.
Yeah, he was.
Ask Taylor Swift.
You know, there was some other question. There is one here I'd really like to ask you before we do this whole rapid fire thing. It's just a little fun, but about the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like, tell us a little bit how you got into it.
Oh, this is a whole nother hour. You thought the last answer was long-winded. Good Lord. My godfather was Bob Wall. He passed away this year and was like the single most influential man in my life. I got bullied a lot as a kid. For those who don't know who Bob Wall is, when Bruce Lee came to America, Bruce Lee sought him out. And then put him in all his movies. He's the guy with the scar down his eye that Bruce would always beat the crap out of and be like, "You lose, Carl Miller." Like, he was that guy. And Bob was the guy who taught my dad how to fight. This is the craziest story. We can get to those if you want after this. But my dad was good friends with Muhammad Ali. And Ali used to always whip his beat him up. And they would spar at his house all the time with gloves on, but like in the backyard or in the living room. My dad would come home with black eyes and they'd have to cover him up on the show and all this. And so he met Bob Wall because Bob Wall was like the trainer to actors. He made like James Garner into a tough guy.
Yeah.
Steve McQueen, he was Steve McQueen, made Steve McQueen a tough guy instead of just some soft little actor. Sorry for all the Steve McQueen fans. But so he's like, "Will you teach me how to fight?" And my godfather taught him the check hook. And so Muhammad and him it's so crazy, it's Muhammad. He wasn't my friend, he was my dad's friend. But Muhammad and him are sparring one day in Ali's living room. And Ali's back was to his couch. He had this like white 70s like plush couch. And my dad catches him with a check hook and gives Ali a bloody nose. And Ali doesn't get knocked out, but he trips on the couch and falls down. And my dad runs to Ali's bathroom, grabs a towel, wipes the blood off his face, runs out of the house, gets in his 75 Stingray and hauls butt back home. While he's driving, Ali's called the house. My mom's answered, and he's like, "You tell that boy I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him the next time I see him." And my mom's like, my dad gets home, she's like, "Muhammad Ali wants to kill you. What happened?" And my dad's like, look what I did." And he framed the towel with the blood on it.
That's great.
On crushed purple velvet, the way you would a war medal.
Yeah.
With mahogany framing, and my mom still has it to this day. It says June 21st. It was the day before my dad's birthday. I think it was the 22nd, or the day after his birthday. It says June 21st, 1975, Ali's blood. And I've asked for it for years, and my mom, she says the same thing to me: "When I'm dead, you can have it." But until then, she keeps it. So he had that, and that's all because of Bob Wall, who was my introduction to jiu-jitsu. So he was a real tough guy, and when I was 12 years old or 13 years old, I was a hot shot, I was gonna say a different word, a hot shot wrestler, and thought I was the man, right? And he introduced me to this real man who I still train with to this day, named Jean-Jacques Machado. And Jean-Jacques was famous for winning the Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu tournament and like tapping out every Gracie there was, and he only had one hand. The fingers never grew in on his left hand. And I'm looking at this guy, and my godfather's like, "Yeah, show him what you got." I'm like, "He's got one hand, I'm gonna smoke this guy." Because I pinned guys older than me before. Like, karate guys couldn't wrestle. That's how I won fights. So I go, "Yeah, all right." And in less than 5 seconds, this dude had me on both his shoulders on this like modified fireman's carry on the second floor of this building in Tarzana, California, and is spinning me around going, "Which window, little Freddie, which window?" Like he's gonna throw me out. And I looked like Chris Tucker in Rush Hour, where he's like, "Which one of y'all just kicked me?" Like, I had no idea what jiu-jitsu even was. And Chuck Norris, who was my first karate instructor, be jealous, was the one who brought the Machados there. He was Bob Wall's best friend. And my uncle Gene LaBelle, be jealous, was a judo master. He was the one that trained Ronda Rousey's mother back in the day, and Gokor, and like all these other like legends of the mixed martial arts community. And they were all worshiping this guy. And I was like, what is jiu-jitsu? Like, it wasn't a common term back then. And I fell in love with this man, with what he could teach me. He trains my son today. And he's taught me more about being a father than he has about jiu-jitsu, because he applies these philosophies to his life. So yeah, jiu-jitsu, like I said, we could talk about it forever, man. It's done so much for my life. Got me DQ'd from a couple wrestling matches, but whatever, you know. It was still fun, and I had a good time, you know. But yeah, I still train 3 days a week with him. He just had knee surgery, so we haven't trained for 4 weeks. But a buddy of mine who's an ex-Marine, he's a black belt and can whoop on me pretty good, so I train with him in the meantime, but he ain't no Jean-Jacques.
It's kind of weird to end on some of these whimsical
Rapid fire's
questions.
fun, man. It's fun.
Yeah.
Craig Kilborn used to do it. We can do it too.
Oh, really? I thought I invented it.
I don't even think Craig Kilborn invented it.
Okay. All right, here we go. What was your favorite cartoon growing up as a kid?
Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes.
First music you ever bought with your own money?
Def Leppard.
Oh,
Def Leppard on a record, not even a tape or a CD, on a record. Yeah, man. Yeah.
They're still going.
They are still going, man.
Favorite song of all time?
That's too hard. Probably Purple Rain.
First car?
My first car was a 1987 Bronco to match my mom's 78 Bronco, which is the far superior model.
Favorite movie of all time?
I already mentioned it, They Live, with Rowdy Roddy Piper, because it's the greatest line in the history of cinema, which is, I've come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass.
And I'm all out of bubble gum.
Best line ever.
Name an unsung hero in your industry who you think deserves more recognition.
I think Vincent D'Onofrio is the best of his generation, and he's been in a few mainstream movies. You know, younger people will know him as Kingpin from the Daredevil series, which I hope they bring him back in, because he was the glue in all of those scenes. I find the choices that he makes, I watch him and go, I would never get there. Like, my brain would never break down the scene the way his did, and I would never make the choice that he's made. How in God's name did he get there? Like, that's all I think about anytime I watch him work. And I watch him work I even watch like Law and Order, which is not my kind of show, because he did one called Criminal Intent. And I'm sitting there like, this guy's just teaching acting class in an hour-long serialized drama that he's far superior than in every way, shape, or form. And I just find him fascinating. So I'd say he's the most unheralded or underrated, or someone that deserves more shine and spotlight. He's always been someone that impressed me.
Favorite ride at Disney?
Oh man, okay, so everyone's gonna be so disappointed when I say this. It's the Tiki Room.
Yeah.
With all the birds where they sing.
Sure.
Yeah, so this is my favorite. It's not a ride, it's just like an experience. My wife hates birds.
Yeah.
So once we started dating, I took her there, and she was like, "We are not going in the tiki." And so now it's not that it's my favorite. I just know it tortures Sarah, and she gets uncomfortable. Like, she breaks out in hives because she has like a phobia of birds, like I am with snakes. And so she like starts scratching and shifting in the seat, and I'll make her sit through the whole thing. We only go to it once, but outside of that, as far as actual rides go, it's the Haunted Mansion. Every day of the week, I could just ride that ride 1,000,000 times in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tiki Room, sorry to disappoint the world, that's my favorite, man. Those birds are dope, they got personality.
You've been popped, you know?
I feel popped.
Let's see.
I feel popped.
We have it up here. There you are.
Yeah, man, I'd sign those and the Kane and Jarrises, but lately I've been getting way more Fred Jones that I sign. So shout out to Fred Jones. I get more Funkos than anything when I do any of these.
And
my guy doesn't look quite as good, and he's bodiless. He's the bodiless horseman.
So is that so? That's what you decided to build right there. Is he done?
Yeah. Well, I couldn't get my legs to fit. The legs I wanted didn't fit as well. But this is what he would look like. He'd just be a high schooler. He'd be pretty chill. But it would be an anime, so he would have some sort of special power. I was terrible at math, still am. So he'd probably have some mathematical prowess and be able to crush that. But I was. I'll say I got C's and D's in math, just to be generous to myself, but I don't believe I received either of those grades.
What are you going to call your creation there?
His name will be Freddie-san.
All right.
He's going to be Japanese.
Nice.
I think Freddie-san will be his name. Yeah, and he's good at trigonometry, which I probably couldn't even spell.
Right. Yeah, I know I couldn't.
Here, throw it this way. I see you. Boom. Kanan Jarrus versus Fred Jones. In the ultimate fight, who wins? I haven't got to ask you a single question.
I'm going to go with Fred because he would somehow.
That's the smart answer.
he would hone some sort of spirits to.
And he also has Shaggy and Scooby, who would accidentally save the day.
Yeah.
And instead of Kanan coming in, they'd be like, oops, I slipped, and he'd trip and then like cut himself in the stomach and perform harakiri. Yeah, Fred Jones always wins. Unless one day you make an Iron Bull one. I know he's not as popular as these guys, so he probably won't make the cut. But if you did, he'd sit right here on top of both of them.
Honestly, this has been my favorite interview. Thank
Oh,
you
you're so
much.
nice,
no,
man.
Really,
I appreciate that so
It's my
much.
favorite interview in the history of Pop Talk.
I appreciate those words. You didn't have to say that, and that's really kind of you. I try to be as open and generous at my age as I can be. In my 20s, I was real uncomfortable doing interviews.
Yeah.
And now with a little more experience, I feel like I can actually say a couple things that I know about instead of just guessing all the time like I had to in my 20s.
Super inspiring, and I think
Thank
a
you.
lot of people can take a lot from this. And when we get the final thing ready to go, let's try to get as many people to see this as possible. I think
will.
it can really help.
Like an original fan film, if you send it to me, I will make sure every single person that follows me sees it. So
We'll do it.
as much as I can. And don't sleep on Freddie-san in a anime coming to Netflix near you, or Crunchyroll, or whatever ones you guys want.
All right, folks, that wraps up another edition of Pop Talk with Freddie Prinze Jr. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you, dude.